A criminal investigation is now underway in Florida into that heat-related death of the 8 residents at a nursing home. You've heard about this after Hurricane Irma knocked out the power, leaving the facility with no air conditioning. However, that nursing home was within walking distance of a hospital that was operating. We had a Florida congresswoman on our air yesterday who wondered if anyone will actually be held criminally accountable.
Now there's a lot of finger pointing, Eric. The nursing home says, the state officials didn't act. The utility company, Florida Power and Light, didn't act. They even are now blaming Governor Rick Scott. But although there are differing accounts about who called what and what they reported as needing help, the fact is people died.
Let's bring in our legal panel on this. Keisha Hebon is a former prosecutor and current defense attorney, and Alex Little, former assistant federal prosecutor, and is also currently a defense attorney. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Okay, guys, so this is obviously an inexcusable and horrific event that took the lives of these elderly people. There's so much he said, she said, who said what when, pointing fingers about who asked for help. What kind of charges could the nursing home and its staff be facing? Keisha, I'll start with you. How would you even go about prosecuting a case like this?
Yeah, well, definitely there's definitely criminal liability here. They could be charged with aggravated manslaughter because in the state of Florida, anytime an elderly person or a child dies from culpable negligence, it's elevated to a first-degree offense of aggravated manslaughter. And this case clearly is a case of culpable negligence. It's so horrific to think about a hospital being so close,
right, so nearby. Alex, the nursing home does say they repeatedly asked for help and released even a detailed timeline of what they say shows attempts to get help after the storm knocked out the air conditioning after Irma occurred. Now, a spokesperson for the Florida Department of Health says that the home could have done much more to protect its residents. You know, I mentioned that working hospital. So who do we believe when you've got both sides, releasing timelines and statements like this?
Well, you're right. It's hard to know without all the facts who is responsible for what. But I think it's really hard to deny that if you call for help and you don't get help, that doesn't mean you don't do anything. You just give up. Ultimately, you are the people who are responsible for this vulnerable population. The people at that nursing home depended on the nurses, the staff, the administrators of that hospital to care for them. So if the police aren't showing up and you're not getting your calls returned, you don't just sit on your hands. You do something about it. And here, they apparently did nothing. And I think the fact they could have gone across the street, they could have just evacuated the building. That they didn't do any of those things shows a great degree of culpability on their hands, no matter what they may have tried to do or thought about doing.
Alex, as we learn more about this incident, we have learned from published reports, at least, that the nursing home started evacuating people only when they started finding that people were dead. Yeah. And that people were in cardiac arrest. That is when the evacuations began. Just that fact alone is so upsetting. I think everybody watching right now probably has either had an experience with a nursing home, has had a loved one that they've faced putting in a nursing home. It is not an easy decision. And to know that this happened to those 8 families. Keisha, let me kick it back to you. The Florida governor, Rick Scott, announced new rules just this weekend requiring nursing homes and assisted living facilities to have generators that could handle keeping a comfortable temperature for at least 96 hours if there was ever a case like this.
Right.
It's a great start. But shouldn't nursing homes have that in place?
Absolutely.
With the heat in Florida, with what it is?
Absolutely. Anytime you're dealing with disabled or elderly people or sick people and they require certain temperatures, they're on ventilators or they're on oxygen machines, you should have generators. I don't understand why they didn't have it. But the fact that these people suffered, because it's not like they had sudden deaths. They had to suffer through the extreme heat. And these staff members sat there and allowed them. And as Alex said, they could have taken them to the hospital. They could have had other measures in place. But I think the fact that the governor is now putting new procedures in place is only going to help plaintiffs who are going to file civil lawsuits against the nursing home in the state of Florida.
And Alex, let's talk about these potential lawsuits that are going to be coming. We know that, right?
Yes,
one of the things that these family members have called for, and their attorneys representing them now, is that the evidence needs to be preserved. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about, the cameras that were in place inside of the rehabilitation center, the cell phone records, anything at all. That is so important. And now these families are saying we need to not only gather it, we need to gather it right now to preserve everything, to preserve this evidence. 8 people are dead. Are they going to have trouble doing that? You know, cell phone towers were out. The power was out. Is that going to be an issue?
No, probably not. I mean, this is also now a criminal investigation, and so if folks try to delete things, get rid of emails or text messages they may have sent, well, now they're committing the further crime of obstructing justice. But I do want to say we've been piling on this healthcare home, and it certainly deserves it. But I do think the state and the first responders and the power company deserve responsibility. This was a collective failure. When 8 people die, you can't just point one finger. And if it's true that they called the cell phone the governor gave on his televised address and got no response, I mean, the governor needs to be held responsible. The power companies need to be held responsible. And I think through the lawsuits and through these criminal investigations, we'll learn a lot more, and hopefully those folks will be as well.
Okay, real quick, I do want to get the governor's tweet up on the screen, because he did send out a tweet about this. He says, "I am outraged over the deaths at the rehabilitation center at Hollywood Hills. We must understand their decision to keep patients in danger." And it's important what you just said, Alex, that, you know, a lot of people have been piling on because it is such a horrific event. We don't know all of the details. The details still have yet to come. These families need to know, though, that someone will be held accountable. The whole thing is so sickening. So I'll ask you both before I let you go, who do you see in the end taking the fall? Keisha.
I would say the nursing home staff, because you were talking about a hurricane and a state of emergency, so the governor cannot respond to every situation. I'm sure there were numerous incidents where people had emergencies, so I think the nursing home staff will ultimately be liable in this situation.
Alex, what do you think?
Well, the same. The nursing home, the folks who were there on the ground who had sort of the last best chance to help these folks.
And I'm sure everybody involved in that nursing home is also horrified that this took place. So we'll continue to keep our eyes on this one and bring you the very latest and get your perspective along the way as well. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you.